Dorian Warlock is a new archetype that's been released with the newest expansion. The idea behind the deck is that you want to be using Cursed Catacombs in addition to Dorian to be able to get your Amaggaan or whatever its name is, and then with that you're able to then deal a lot of damage because you can then go the 1 drop into then the 10 drop, which then deals 10 damage to your opponent. And then in addition to that, you can then use another one of your high cost minions or high cost spells to be able to deal more damage to them. After that, since it's only turn 6, in general you'll have quite a big board that your opponent might have trouble dealing with, and that then is going to be too much for your opponent to cater with. The Ysera obviously is quite useful in combination with your other cards because you're able to get more mana out, and it's quite efficient for it. And then if you don't end up drawing the combo that you really want, you then will be just essentially like a normal deck, and you generally can still win with that, but it definitely is a lot weaker that you'll find. Nydus Wyrm in the Zerg package does allow you a little bit of compensation in terms of if you don't get your god start, you'll potentially have a little bit of trouble, but it can then help you with that. Cards that you're looking to mulligan for in this deck, you're obviously looking to keep Cursed Catacombs, you want to keep Dorian, you want to keep Fractured Power, you want to keep Nydus Wyrm, and then you also, depending on the matchups, you're looking at keeping cards that will help you survive for the extra turns, so things like the Dread Soul or the Table Flip or Hellfire or those sorts of things. But yeah, you usually and pretty much never want to keep any of your higher cost things. You definitely don't want to keep the Wild God because that is your main win condition coming with the Dorian, and if you do draw into it, you still have ways to get out that play later on in the game. Going into the gameplay, I did just use my Nydus Wyrm. I used the one on the right, it doesn't really matter too much. I have the 2 Cursed Catacombs in my hand, so I will be looking at doing around the turn 5 play. I'll go coin first, and then I'll use the Cursed Catacombs to then get the Dorian and things like that. I did draw into Fractured Power here. I used the coin here first just in case they had an ice trap or something that could potentially slow me down. And then I've used the Cursed Catacombs here. So unfortunately it didn't end up hitting my Dorian, which is a little bit of a problem. I did get the Xavius here though, so I'm just going to use the Xavius to give me another turn to try and get it. And I did end up getting the Dorian here, so I am just going to click on the Dorian, it will go to the top of my deck, and then next turn I'll be able to use it. I do have a few different options of cards that I can use, so I'm just going to use the Nydus Wyrm to draw through some more cards, and then pass over to them. So I did potentially have the play last turn if I had drawn into the Dorian, but unfortunately it didn't end up working out that way, which is fine. They play down their Dorian, and then they use Cursed Catacombs. They only have 2 cards left in their deck for minions, so it's quite likely they haven't drawn exceptionally well. They did get the Ysera, so they're playing that down now, and then they're going to use another card which will Dread Soul, so they're not really getting too far with the play, and then they're just going to trade into my Xavius. So in general their hand was a lot weaker than mine for that, and I obviously drew a lot better in terms of being able to deal with it. So this turn I did draw into the Dorian, which was placed in my deck last turn. I choose the Wild God, which is pretty much always the card that you want to choose. Obviously making sure that you have enough hand, space in your hand. You play down the 1 drop first, you then play down the 10 drop, which then you play down your next card that you want to. In this case I am playing down the Kerrigan, just because it is going to be in general the best of my cards. They still do have the Dorian in their hand, on their field, but it's not too much of an issue for me, simply because of the fact that I know they only have 2 minions in their deck, and one of them they already grabbed out, which was the Ysera, so it's unlikely they're going to be able to get any more value coming from the Dorian. The field that I have now is probably going to be a bit too much for them, which is obviously quite good. They did play down their big minion now, and then they're probably going to play down the Freak and hope that their board ends up getting quite good with it. They end up getting the Sizzling Stream, which is not really that great in this sort of situation, simply because I do have Win on board with so much damage sitting here. They end up using their spells, and it does discard a few of their different things, but with how I've got all the damage still here, they don't really have a way to clear the 2 minions that I have, and unfortunately I did end up losing one of their minions, which could have potentially helped with being able to trade. So that, you know, pretty much sums up the sort of area that they are falling into. So as you can see, the deck does high roll quite a lot, but in general you are able to do a decent amount enough to be able to win, even if you don't. Like, they didn't do too bad considering that they didn't get the high roll, but they were able to get to their turn 10 by using the Ysera and then getting the Wild God onto the field. And if things had gone a little bit better for them, they would have been able to win using that play there. So you still can get a decent hand going, even if you don't end up getting the perfect cards into that opening hand, because Ysera can help you get to that Wild God a lot easier. In this mulligan, I kept the Catacombs and I also kept the Demonic Studies. Demonic Studies is useful because it allows you to get reduced down cost for Xavius, but also if you are playing against a deck that is going to go a more infinite sort of route, you're able to use it to get outkill Jaden, which is obviously quite useful. The Studies ended up getting me the Xavius here, so I'm going to be using that this turn, just to be able to get set up and hopefully get the Dorian out, and then I'll be using that on the turn 6. I did end up drawing the Dorian here, which is good for me. The Xavius, I ended up thinking about this a little bit more later on, and I could have used the Xavius here or on turn 4 to be able to get my Ysera in my hand or something like that to be able to get a stronger setup. And that was a decision that I did make a little bit of a mistake for, so it would have been a lot stronger using it this turn and then using the Dorian next turn to be able to get it out. But that's just a simple in hindsight sort of move. So this turn I play down the Cavern, which it does deal a little bit of damage to them, but it probably would have been better using the Xavius here, simply because I don't really have any big costed minions in my hand, which does make the Dorian play a little bit weaker. But on the flip side, I could have gone for the Dorian play, then used the Catacombs, got the Ysera, and then played down the Xavius to then get the Amaggaan. So it would have been a little bit stronger in that way as well. So I did make a little bit of a mistake here twice. First by not using the Xavius last turn, and then second by not playing down the Puppeteer and then just going for the Ysera and then going for the Cursed Catacombs into the Xavius, and then the Xavius into the Wild God. So it did, fortunately for me, not end up mattering too much, because I will obviously next turn be able to get that sorted out for me. So because next turn I'll be able to use the Ysera anyway with the Amaggaan. So I use the Cursed Catacombs here with my Dorian. I only have a few cards left in my deck. I choose the Amaggaan, I play it down, and then I use the Amaggaan again, and I then choose the Ysera here. Ysera then can get me some more mana, and then it also allows me to then get the Xavius online if I want to. I could have used the Xavius in that turn instead to be able to then get the Frack into my hand, but it doesn't really matter too much, simply because I'm still dealing with a relatively strong sort of setup, and it means that I have access to more mana doing it this way, just in case next turn if I need to use 2 of the Fracks or whatever for it. They play down their Bob the Bartender. Obviously they're going to freeze my board. It does mean that I'm a little bit in a weaker sort of situation here. I do have the Frack in my hand. They only have 5 health. With the Eternal, it does mean that they end up getting up to more now, which is fine. But with how the Wild God, with how the Wild Gift and the Dark Gift ended up landing on my Frack, it meant that I could draw it twice, so I was able to get the combo of 2 times to get 2 of the 1 cost guys into my hand. I end up playing down the 9 cost one, simply because if I need to, I do have access to more, and it will obviously be in my best interest next turn to be able to deal some more damage to them. So I just play it down, with the board that I have, I'm in a very significant and solid position, and it's very unlikely that they'd have any sort of way of clearing it. So, as you can see, like I did make a few misplays in that game, but the deck does have a lot of power behind it that you can keep capitalizing on different plays that you do. The lower curve that's used for the deck, like the table flip, Hellfire, the Nydus wyrm, in addition to the Zerg package, it allows you to deal with somewhat weaker cards that your opponents may have, and it means that if your opponent is trying to go wide or aggro on you, you generally can survive those sorts of plays. Going into this match, so I had been playing quite a bit since then, the previous matches, and I obviously got into the top 1,000, which is quite good for me. I am playing against another Warlock. It's likely they'll either be the deck out Warlock or the Warlock or the Dorian Warlock or whatever it's called that I am playing. And the idea is that you're looking to try and get your combo out as quick as possible against them. The gameplay that I'm doing here is going to show the deck what it doesn't draw exactly what you need to, so you will start drawing into cards that aren't particularly perfect. Towards the end of the game, it does get a lot better for me because I do end up getting the cards that I ended up wanting. I do just trade the deadline here. I don't really want to waste it just yet, and then I just continue on my turn. The deck that I am playing, since they did show the location, was that they are using the deck out Warlock, so I just trade my card again. I do get the Dorian here, so that is a very good draw for me. And then I use the studies here, and I'm just going to choose the Kill Jaden, just simply because they are using the deck out list, so if I do need to go into a later game scenario, I do have that availability. And in general, it is going to be quite strong for that. I do have the Nydus wyrm here, so I just use that to get out my cards. I get the Cavern and a Consume, which is good, and then I just pass over to them with the 9 cards in my hand. If I had an extra card, I would obviously consider using the coin there, but obviously I don't. They end up using their Catacombs here to get themselves another card from their deck, and then they trade away a card. I think that it looks like they didn't end up getting anything good from that, which is a little bit unfortunate for them, so they had to get rid of their Ancient of Yore. I draw into a deadline here again, so it's getting a little bit frustrating with how many I'm drawing. Unfortunately, I do draw into the Wild God here, so it does make the deck a lot weaker. You are looking, obviously, for a Dorian plus a Catacombs to be able to then get that play off. So now I'm just hoping that I don't draw Ysera early, because then Ysera, if I draw into Ysera, it does make the combo a lot weaker. I do get the Cavern. They end up playing their own Cavern down, which is fine. And I draw into another Nydus wyrm, so I am discounting the amount of cards. I just use it just because there is only the one other Zerg card in my deck, and then I just pass over to the opponent, so there isn't really too much that I was doing that turn. Unfortunately, there's not really too much that I could do. They end up using a Consume on their Cavern, and then they end up just drawing a card with the Ancient of Yore. I do draw into another of the I do end up drawing into another of the deadlines, so I have to trade it away again, which is a little bit unfortunate. I use the coin here and I just tap just to see what I end up getting. Unfortunately, again, it's another deadline, so it's just keep on going with that. And I draw into Bob here, which is fine, I guess. And I'm going to have to use a Consume here just to be able to get it out of my hand. So as you can see, my hand is quite clunky with what I've got because of the fact that I haven't drawn particularly well in terms of I haven't got the mana cheating card, the Fractured Power. I haven't got a Catacombs and things like that, so it does make the deck obviously a lot slower for that particular way. They end up freezing and drawing some more cards for themselves, and they use the Dirty Rat. It does get my Bob, which is fine. It's not too much of a concern for that. They use another Dirty Rat, and at this time it gets out my my Wild God, which is a little bit unfortunate. Obviously slowing the deck down significantly against them. I draw into another Studies here, and at this point I am getting to the point where it's not going to be too useful for particular cards. I draw into a Table Flip as well, which is decent. And what I'm trying to do now is to apply a little bit of pressure towards them. But the problem is that with the with the cards that I do have in my hand, they aren't particularly strong into them, and since I haven't got the Ysera yet, it does mean that it's slowing down my strategy quite a lot. I end up choosing here the Doom Maiden, so I'm hoping to get one of the cards in a later turn that potentially could be strong for my opponent, since now it's at the point where they are at a significant advantage because of the fact that they can quite easily clear this board, and then they can get back heaps of armor. So now the game plan essentially turns into trying to stall them, or to try to deal with their wide board and try to deal with essentially their strong minions they're going to create, because they'll be looking at doing things like the Kill Jaden turn relatively soon. They'll be looking at doing Wheel of Death relatively soon, so it is now getting to the point where I do need to start considering what I need to do. Unfortunately, again, I do draw Ysera, which is before the Cursed Catacombs, so it obviously is slowing down the deck even more. And with the cards that I do have in my hand here, it is now at the point that I am going to need to play down the Kill Jaden, because there isn't really any use keeping the cards that I have here, and I do need to make sure that I'm drawing more stuff that could potentially be useful. So I end up doing the life tap because now I need to start applying pressure towards them, and I end up just passing from that. So now that it is at the turn where the Kill Jaden is played, it does mean that I now need to start applying more pressure towards them, because the idea is I'm trying to make it so they don't have enough armor or too much armor for me to stop with the big play that's here. They end up getting out two of the giants, which unfortunately does mean that they're going to be able to clear this board quite easily. I do obviously still have the ping, which is good, the mortal coil, but because they got Ancient of Yours building up more armor, it does make the game a bit slower. It does make it a little bit more tricky for me to deal with the stuff that's there. I do play the Ysera down here just because I do need to start getting more mana, because if I don't have an exceptionally large amount of mana, I could quite easily lose this game, because I'm going to need to be playing down pretty much all the minions, or two sets of minions down each turn, to apply enough pressure to them where they need to just keep using clears rather than using their Wheel of Death or using their Kill Jaden. They end up playing down the Elise, and they're obviously hoping for the summon a 1/1 copy or summon a copy of a friendly minion, because once they put the Curse campaign on it, it means that they'll get even more armor, they'll get even more, it'll get even stronger for them. So Elise is definitely a very strong card for this deck, simply because it does allow them to get the extra 1/1 friendly minion. Fortunately for me, they didn't end up drawing into it, which would have pretty much spelt loss for this game. I do have the two of my 6-drops in my hand, which is decent, and I obviously have the Mortal Coil as well that I can use to be able to deal with the Glacial Shard. So if I was to do that properly, it would have been better for me to do the other way for the order, but it doesn't really matter too much. The Razadier will be quite a strong card going into these turns, because of the fact that when I do play it down, it means that they're not going, it potentially could discard an important card, and what we'll come to see shortly is that it does discard a very important card of theirs, so it means that it puts me in a strong position. They use their Wheel of Death here. I normally would have gone for the Kill Jaden turn, I think, but it does mean it sets me on a timer. With the 21 armor they've got, I guess it is a relatively decent play. They probably weren't assuming for the Razadier play, but yeah, I ended up hitting it, and it does mean that they are now in a significantly worse position. The problem that does come from it, though, is the fact that they still do have a lot of ways to clear this board. They still will have the things like the Eternal Layover. They'll have they'll have other cards as well, which will be quite strong for them. Without the Kill Jaden, it does definitely make it more difficult for them, because they're going to be taking fatigue damage, and they're not getting any extra minions to play down on the board. But yeah, like they still do have access to Ceaseless at the moment, they still do have access to Eternal Layover, and Obviously it is quite easy to clear when you do have the Cavern here as well, so I do need to make sure that I'm getting my cards out as easy as possible. I do have the Viper here, which is a decent card to have. I do obviously know they have a Ceaseless in their hand, so I'm playing down the Viper as well, just to get it down onto the field. Fortunately for me, it does hit their Ceaseless Expanse. It probably was better that turn playing down the Telegraph first, to make it so they wouldn't be able to get extra value coming from the Ceaseless Expanse. I play down the Doom Maiden just to apply a bit more pressure towards them, and then I just use the hero power to deal some damage, so I am trying to clear as much as I can and apply as much of the pressure as I can to them. The next turn I do have the window shopper, which I'll be able to use to be able to get some more cards and potentially get another one of the strong dudes out. They end up using their location to get a 2-1 onto the board. They do some trading and they use the Ceaseless Expanse to trade, and then with the table flip it obviously does clear that. With only the 3 cards in their hand, I am now in a bit of a better position than what I was before. So I play down the 6-drop here because I am looking to apply pressure. It could have been better playing it down after this one, but it's fine. I do get another Razadea here. I can't use it just yet. But it does mean that next turn I'll be able to apply more of that pressure towards them. I choose the other mini. It doesn't get me anything particularly strong, but I do choose the Ashimond because it will mean that I'll be able to get a wide board against them, and then it will apply more pressure towards them as well. So I use the hero power, and then just hit into them. With their 3 cards left in their hand, they don't particularly have too many more strong options, and they've only got 2 turns left to go for their wheel to end up activating. They use the Eternal Layover combo here, which does obviously mean that they can clear the board quite easily. But I do obviously have the Razadea, which does take out another one of their cards. It gets rid of Bob, which is a very big hit, once again, and it means that they more than likely won't have any other cards to be able to stall out my other plays, and they end up just conceding. So, like, I got quite unlucky at the start, but in terms of my hits for the different cards attacking their hand, they definitely were a lot stronger. So it does show the deck has legs, but I did get quite lucky towards the end by hitting the Kill Jaden, by hitting the Bob, by hitting the Ceaseless Expanse, by hitting all those different sorts of cards. But yeah, like the Bob and the Ceaseless Expanse weren't as unlikely, but the Kill Jaden definitely was a very strong hit for me. So playing against a Hunter, they're usually the hand buff Hunter. It's not too often I've been playing against any Quest Hunters, even after the patch. I use the trade to be able to draw an extra card. It's not really going to do too much at the moment. The Xavius will be quite strong, potentially tutoring out the Dorian, but that's about it for me. They end up using a tracking to draw another card. Kerrigan's quite a decent draw, and I just use a hero power. Unfortunately, again, I hit a deadline, which means that I won't be able to get access to the trade for it. But I do find deadline a little bit of a bait card, to be honest. Like, I ended up drawing into it so often compared to my other cards, even though it should be the same likelihood as any other 2 card that's here. But yeah, I guess that ends up what happening with it, because I don't even think I got the Cursed Catacombs last game at all, and that's obviously your best card in your deck. They end up using playing down their Parrot Sanctuary and then using a tracking. It does obviously set them up for potentially strong turn next turn. I use the Xavius here. Obviously I'm looking for the Dorian. I end up hitting the Dorian, and I end up just passing over to them. So now I'm just looking for a Cursed Catacombs or something along those lines. They play down their Scout. This is Discover Hunter. So Discover Hunter, I think, has gotten a little bit stronger with the new patch with the Neri, but the problem that comes from it is the fact that it requires a lot of thought and planning and a lot of different plays that you need to do to be able to deal a decent board for it. I do end up using the tapping the power twice. It clears the Scout, but also it does mean that they just have the one minion left on the board. Obviously, clearing the scout is definitely the reason why I did it, simply because of the fact that by clearing the scout, it means that you don't really have to deal with the opponent's board that's there. Yeah, so they play down Xavius here. I obviously want to try and clear that as easy and quick as possible. I draw into Drain Soul, so it's not particularly strong for me. The Dorian isn't a particularly good play either. I did fortunately draw into the Deadline here, so I use that to get rid of their Xavius. Obviously, the less damage as possible is going to be the best for this deck to be taking. They end up only getting one of the Xavius buffs off because of that. So the Deadline, fortunately, I guess, since I did draw into it that time, it meant that I was able to get the Xavius dealt with. They end up using their Xavius here. They use the Parrot Sanctuary here to be able to get out their Niall, and it means that they'll be able to access the hero power, the tracking hero power, which is obviously very powerful, just like it was the last formats. I end up drawing into a Nydus wyrm here. There isn't too much that I can get from it, like I can just get the consume from it, and another Nydus wyrm doesn't really mean too much for me, simply because there wasn't really anything I could get from it. I did just want to get it burnt out of my hand. I end up drawing into a Drain Soul here. I use the table flip to clear their minions, and then I use my my location to be able to take out the rest. They end up hitting 2 eruptions, so it does mean that it's getting close on being able to deal with the giant that I just summoned, unfortunately. Once again, I haven't drawn into the Catacombs, which does show the deck still can be quite powerful, even if you don't draw the best. Like, I've drawn all my sort of late game sort of stuff. They end up using a rock here. I personally don't think that was the best play, but then they show that they have the wound praise, they're able to trade it into the giant to take it out. So if they didn't have a way to take out the giant, that would have obviously been a lot worse, but obviously with the hand they had, they did have a way to do that. I draw into the Ysera here, so it does show that I'm not, I still don't have any of the potential ways of getting the stuff out that I need. I have another Consume here, I have a Drain Soul, so I use the Drain Soul on the 1-3. I use the Nydus wyrm just to get out of my hand because of the fact that I don't have any other cards that I really want. And then I just pass my turn, because next turn, if I don't draw into the Cursed Catacombs, I will be just playing down the Ysera. And yeah, it's not the best sort of hand. And the other thing for Bob is that with the cards that I have accessible to me, I think it's just at this point in time, just the Frack and the Wild God. So if I end up using the Bulb and it gets the Wild God, I do have just lethal coming from that on turn 10. So there still is that sort of play at the back of my mind. They end up using the Bursting Shot. It does deal 2 more damage to me. I have the extra Consume here to be able to heal some more health if I need to, which will be useful going into this turn. I end up having a Mortal Coil as well that I draw into, so I just play down the Carrigan. It means that I get back more health. It deals with the majority of their board, and I can use the Mortal Coil to deal with the 2-1. So I do draw into the Cursed Catacombs here, so next turn I will be able to do the play and deal with their state that's there. So even if you don't draw particularly well, you still do have decent sort of game against a lot of different decks because of the amount of heal that you, and even somewhat pressure that you end up being able to generate through just your giants and your Cavern and things like that. They end up using a freeze onto my giant, so it makes it a little bit weaker for that. I do end up drawing this turn. I get a Fractured Power, which is fine, I guess. I play down the Puppet Dorian. I use the Cursed Catacombs here. It does mean that I can get 2 of the Wild God coming out. So I use the first one. It gets me another guy. And then I play down the Amaggaan. In terms of that order, it obviously got the 10 damage one out. And then next play I can do the one cost. I do obviously have the Ysera Awakens here, and then I can just deal with that board. So, um, in terms of order, it was fine. I could have potentially done the ordering a little bit better, but yeah, if you've enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe, and bye for now.